Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan show. Thanks for joining the conversation. Feminism is a word that can be very triggering for people. However, the definition is simply the advocacy of women's rights on the basis of the equality of the sexes. That's not so scary now, is it? As a martial artist, I've been criticized for how I look or even act. How dare I decide to be a podcaster and a martial artist? The day-to-day challenges of being a woman in the world are varied for everyone, but every woman I've met has been underestimated at least once in their lifetime. In a previous episode, I share some of my experiences as a female in the martial arts world, but lately there have been events that makes me want to dedicate an entire episode to this train of thought. I've been struggling with the protests in Iran and thinking about the level of freedom that those women are fighting for. Their bravery and actions are inspiring. I hesitated to post this episode because I was afraid it would come across like I was complaining or just stating the obvious. However, it's what I'm thinking and feeling right now, and I know other women are also feeling the same. Women are brave, women are strong, women are resilient. If you decide to check it out, thank you so much for listening. And if you're enjoying my podcast, please rate it on your platform of choice and share it with others. If you would like to support with a donation to help keep this podcast going and support the work I do, you can become a patron of the show by visiting my website or patreon.com/Sifu Mimi Chan. For comments or suggestions, reach out on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan. Now, on with the show. Hi, I'm Sifu Mimi Chan, and I am a Kung Fu teacher. Obviously. All right, those of you on audio with me are probably like, what is she talking about? What is going on today? If you're on video, you can kind of see that I am not in my Kung Fu clothes and Kung Fu gear and what I typically do wear. Yes, I'm kind of trying to make a point and trying to be sarcastic and obvious, but lately there's been just so many thoughts ruminating in my head, a lot of things about what perception is and what we have to sort of live up to, especially we. When I say we, I mean women, and what's expected of us, and also what is accepted. So I am, for those of you listening on audio, I am in my Sunday best. I am in a just like a little cocktail dress, and it's just not really what my Kung Fu Mimi, gear is like, which is always my Lululemon or Kung Fu pants and a Wallam shirt, and pretty much where I feel very comfortable. But I find it interesting that when I do decide to look feminine, or I do decide to care about what my hair or my clothes looks like, that I'm criticized. Sometimes I'm given very nice compliments. This is not an everybody thing, and this is not by any means a rant episode, because obviously I can't do that without Greg Rucka. But it is kind of just something I've been thinking about. Like, there's been a lot of thoughts in my head of who I am, who I'm expected to be, and then how that also translates for other women in the world, other women in this modern world, other women outside of the United States, outside of Florida, like how that just kind of perpetuates. And one of the things that's really got me thinking about it is the protests that are going on in Iran right now, and how brave those women are, and how just angering, frustrating, sad it is that they have to take to the streets in that way, for justice, for equality, for their rights. And on the other side of the world, there's a lot of women that are taking to the streets in the United States right now for justice, equality, and their rights, especially reproductive justice. And it just kind of had me thinking about the fact that when women advocate for themselves, it's sometimes perceived as complaining. Or if I decide that I'm going to talk about the fact that
if I decide to look feminine, then I can't also be a really strong Kung Fu practitioner or a real martial artist, or if I'm wearing something, or if I've gained 5 or more pounds, people have to point that out on YouTube comments and things like that. And not that men don't have those same criticisms. I'm not saying this is just only women, but I do find there's less tolerance for if I look a certain way or if I conduct myself in a certain way. And I'll give you an example is that just right now what I'm doing, which is podcasting, something that I've been very passionate about. I've been very privileged to have conversations and to have been able to prioritize my time and have teams of people that help allow me to have discretionary time to be able to have a voice in this manner. I've been criticized for that, like, oh, why aren't you practicing Kung Fu all the time or teaching? That means you're not dedicated to carrying on your father's legacy. That means you're not really a true Sifu. That means you're not really a real martial artist because I'm on screen or I'm in a podcast or I'm doing other things. And I don't really get caught up in the comments on any of these social media platforms. As you know, I try to stay away from it, but I will check it out or it will get forwarded to me to ask, should we delete this? Like, is it obscene, or does it get, like, in what area does it fall under? And I've been really kind of touched by the fact that some people decide to go on and kind of defend my honor and say things like, well, why can't she be both? How come other people don't get criticized for being out there and doing a podcast or being in the media and then also being able to be a real martial artist, right? Like, why do I get that criticism? And I think that I've just been used to it my whole life, where growing up, I was either a tomboy, and I don't know if that is even appropriate or if that's said anymore, but if I decided I was gonna wear baggy jeans and a t-shirt, I was criticized because I wasn't looking a certain part. And then if I decided I was gonna be very feminine and wear my dresses and care about what kind of shoes I got, and depending on what phase of life I was in, then it was like, oh, well, she's just really girly. She's obviously not a really strong Kung Fu person. And so I think I just got used to that dynamic and then almost became accepting of it. And I know a lot of you are listening like, where are you going with this? Are you just complaining right now? And I really think it's just more about, like, existing as a woman is not easy. And I think looking at and seeing what the women in Iran are going through right now, like, on a scale, it's absolutely insane. And because it's in the news, we think about it, but of course this has been going on forever, and of course there's other parts of the world that have it worse. But I believe that we also get caught up in, just because there's what's perceived as greater struggle or what's perceived as harsher conditions or bigger injustices, doesn't diminish the fact that there are injustices in, first world countries, like countries that are industrialized, countries like the United States. So I think there's just this level of guilt that we carry for those of us that have privilege, like myself, for those of us who live comfortably. I have very, very comfortable surroundings. I'm in a really nice home. I have this gym here that I can double in as a studio, and I'm not broadcasting this from underground in Ukraine or anything insane, but at the same time, it's like, that doesn't make any of my struggles less real to me. And while, yes, we have to acknowledge and empathize, and when we can, help other areas of the world and people who go through these things, I think I tend, I don't want to speak on behalf of others, but I think I tend to then feel guilty if I feel sad or frustrated or am having a challenge in my daily life, or if I'm dealing with sexism or racism directed towards me, that I go, oh, well, other people have it much worse. And I think both can be true. And I wish that I was as eloquent and articulate as Trevor Noah when he kind of did this both can be true thing, where he talked about Kim Kardashian and Kanye West and how her getting stalked by him and her being harassed and her being just basically attacked and just like verbally being abused and everything is still wrong, whether you like her or not as a human, whether you like her or not as a social media icon or whatever it is she does. I honestly don't give them very much thought, didn't even know it existed until I saw the Trevor Noah broadcast. And it's like, but both can be true. Like, you can feel however you feel, but that doesn't make what's happening right. That doesn't make harassing women right. Just because you don't like her, like she deserves this or something, right? And so I think it just brought me to all this thinking of like, wow, what's going on in Iran is so absolutely horrible. I should then not feel badly about what's happening here. And that's totally not true. And I had to kind of like take some time to reframe that and make sure that I wasn't being a complainer, because so many people have it worse, and that both can be true. Like the fact that the Supreme Court Roe v. Wade being overturned happened, and so many people are now facing the fact that they don't have access to abortion, that they don't have the right to over their own body, is completely insane. It's like we're going backwards in time, and that absolutely can be something that we are irate over. And then we can also be empathetic and irate over what's happening to the women in Iran and what's happening with the protests and how everyone's treated. So it just gave me a lot of thoughts on like our guilt of how we're allowed to process things, or if I'm struggling with people who are being sexist towards me in my career and in my industry and in my martial arts world, that just because other people have it worse doesn't mean that that's okay. And it's something like I felt like I wanted to articulate and talk about, just because it's constantly being brought up in different ways, like whether it's these protests happening around the world, whether it's reproductive justice, but the fact that women are constantly operating under different circumstances than our lovely male counterparts. And again, it doesn't mean males don't have struggles. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that the fact of the matter is, just because we are female, especially when we are in an industry like martial arts or an industry that is very male dominated, we're perceived very differently. And our ability to do what we want to do is not equal to others. And it's been interesting because I'm often asked to speak for companies now and for AAPI Heritage Month. And as you know, I've been doing a lot of work with Stop AAPI Hate to advocate for education. And I've been asked a lot of questions, and I feel like the responses I get from different people is varied based on who I'm talking to and how they're perceiving me, right? And so it's really interesting. And one of the things that I've noticed is that it's taken like 40 years for people to kind of take me serious as, oh, I guess she really is going to carry on her father's legacy and actually take Kung Fu seriously now. Like, it's taken this whole time. And I think even still, some elders and some people that have been around, quote unquote, a long time still see me as that 12-year-old who did not try very hard in Kung Fu class and who kind of wanted to stay home and watch cartoons if one could. So I think it's like I'm always fighting against a perception. I'm always fighting against what is expected of me, and that if I do achieve something, it's like, oh wow, that was really good. It's that backhanded compliment that you get often, and I'm not trying to make people feel sorry for me in any way. I'm just kind of trying to share that even though from the outside looking in, it seems like I'm very much in control all the time. It seems like I always have the answers, and that Wallam especially is run very smoothly without resistance, that everything is on path and there's a straight shot, that it's definitely not been easy. And I think anything worth doing is difficult, right? Anything that is worth talking about is also difficult. So when we talk about things like Stop AAP, I Hate, it's often not easy for people to hear, and they don't like to hear it because it makes them feel uncomfortable, perhaps, or Black Lives Matter, right? It makes people feel very uncomfortable. And those are the two social movements over this last 3 years that have been really impacting for me, and that have been something that I try to ensure that I am supporting and in solidarity with, because really it's just been so in your face over the pandemic, from the murder of George Floyd to all of the anti-Asian hate crimes and the spa shooting in Atlanta, and just like all that dynamic happening, and the word racism and anti-racist being thrown out there. I mean, it's very clear to me that we are all a little bit racist, and that we have to work at our prejudices and our biases, because they completely exist. And I think if we're in denial of that, it makes it really hard to navigate being more authentic to who we truly are. And it's very hard when you have these outside factors always telling you, you should be this way, you should dress a certain way, you should talk a certain way. And and so it's just been something I've been thinking about. And so I just decided to turn the camera on, put on a dress, and talk to you about Kung Fu, because that's what you expect when I'm dressed like this, right? To talk about Kung Fu. It's been interesting because through my Kung Fu journey, it's no secret, I started when I was like 2 or 3 years old, and I was just kind of thrown into it. I had to do it. I think when I was really young, it was a little bit fun because we would run around and there was movement. And as I got older, obviously I didn't like it very much, because I would rather be doing something else, like being lazy or playing or watching TV or making friends. And instead I had to be at this class with all of these sweaty people in this non-air-conditioned, mosquito-infected place that I was at all day already, was there late at night. And so I just got this like, this routine. And then it was just something I had to do, and I didn't really enjoy it. And it was just more of a, like, I have to do this. Like, you have to go clean your room. I mean, some people enjoy cleaning the room. I like the after. I like after the room is cleaned, but I'm really not big on the actual cleaning part, right? And so that's how working out is for me. I like after the workout or after the Kung Fu session, but like, oh man, even for me, it's like, okay, gotta motivate myself, gotta get myself ready to go. And it's not always easy. And so, but yeah, so growing up, I was very much expected to do it all the time. And then I was always judged. I was always compared to anybody else, whether it was my older cousins that did Kung Fu that were better, stronger, more flexible, whether it was a video we saw in China of someone better, amazing, and trains 8 hours a day. And so I always get that comparison. I think that was part of the reason that I tended to shy away from wanting to be good at it, and definitely self-sabotaged quite a bit. And I think we do that now even. We self-sabotage, or we talk ourselves out of something, or we just become complicit in accepting the criticism and just going, well, it's something I have to live with. And I'm kind of tired of that. I'm tired of having to live with you being my critics expecting me to dress, speak, be a certain way when they know nothing about me. And I think this is something I've been therapied about, in which you have to really turn off that social media channel to not care, because those aren't the opinions that matter. And even as someone as confident as myself has to tell myself this all the time, that the general public opinion is good because it reinforces, and a lot of you have uplifted me in ways I can't even express gratitude for. But then at the same time, people who know nothing of your life and your struggle and what your day-to-day is like, or the challenges that you are juggling, will say something and just completely sometimes have the power to unravel you for that moment, and just having to be able to say, wow, this person's just being really mean and for no reason, and they have no right to. It's even hard for me to kind of disconnect from. So as a woman in martial arts, I have to say that there's so many times that I've stood up there, or I've entered a room and been the only female in the room, and been so used to that, and have been used to comments that aren't politically correct or are crude or are rude. And I think I just would deal with it, even though I'm a very outspoken and assertive person. I think there was a time and place where I just kind of like didn't even want to engage or didn't want to start the argument. Or on the reverse side, I would. And then I got the reputation of being bitchy or mean or unfriendly. And this is what I'm talking about when I say women can say something exactly the way a man would say it and we would completely be called something negative. It's that double standard, and it really does exist. And I'm not here to bash men. I am not here to just complain about the woes of women. It's just facts. Like, one of the shows I've been enjoying, surprisingly, because as much as I love the next Avenger thing is the next, and I'll watch it, but I won't rewatch it. I mean, they're entertaining. It's not my cup of tea where I'm like counting down the days to the next thing. I've really been enjoying She-Hulk. And the reason is because it's less about the superhero Marvel dynamic, and it's really obviously written. My husband, Oscar, is like, oh, this is obviously written by a woman, and he meant it as a compliment, and he meant it in a positive way, because it's very much empowering to hear through a character that looks like She-Hulk, that's obviously indestructible, and wow, I don't have to worry about walking home with headphones on and being attacked every moment. I don't have to feel like I'm constantly prey, right? Like her saying that and just kind of laughing about it and just really, really quick lines, and I can't replicate it. So, but we really thought it was brilliant, right? Like, so I've really been enjoying that. It's well written and wonderfully acted and executed. I mean, loved her in Orphan Black. So obviously her playing this double dynamic is nothing for her. But yeah, it's something I've been enjoying, and it's, I think, very feminist. And another word that's very triggering for lots of people, because I know a lot of men who are feminists, I know a lot of women who are feminist, and it doesn't mean that they're like literally trying to drive a stake through the heart of a man. It just means that we're fighting for the equality of women, so that there is equality. And that word also can be triggering, and it's like so many words are triggering now. Like, we need to probably focus more on the facts of us being able to exist in a place where words don't affect us as much, and that actions speak louder, and that respect is gained through those actions, and that there's, less judgment because of what you look like, or how you dress, or how you speak. And I've noticed that it is slowly changing. I did a podcast a few episodes ago on women in martial arts. I shared a lot of my stories about how, a lot of the people who would meet my students, like I would meet their family, and they would think the guy was the Sifu, and they would never imagine that I would be the Sifu. And I think even people walking into the school might think I'm like the secretary or something, and that Sifu too, because he's the man in the office, and he's like the other instructor there that's full-time. He's the main teacher because he's an Asian guy, and I'm an Asian woman. I think that dynamic is still there. But then I look at my dad, who people think he's the gardener because he's literally always in the garden doing the manual labor. And I think, well, that's not about a female-male thing. That's just like people seeing what they want to see. And I think that's where this is. It's like people see what they want to see, and we can't really change that perception. Like, we can just do what we need to do. And I really am just kind of speaking to myself here. So thank you all for if you've hung in with me this long, thank you for allowing me to have a therapy session with myself about the facts that, yes, there are some struggles that we as women face, especially in male-dominated industries, but that it really doesn't matter what people want to think or say or do. And the fact that is, I will just keep on doing what I feel is right and doing it in the best way that I know how. And yeah, I just kind of been hearing so many things about the protests in Iran, and a story about a woman, an Afghani woman who was trying to get to the U.S. on a human rights issue and was denied, and just things where, yes, people have it way worse, but it doesn't diminish or make my world not real. But at the same time, it helps bring in perspective of, okay, so what can I do about this, and what can I do about that, and kind of just balancing that all out. And I'm sure right by now you're like, okay, time to turn this one off. She's just going all over the place. And I promise you though, this does have to do with Kung Fu, because really what I learned through my Kung Fu training is that persistence, and it's that like consistency in it helps you find out who you are. And I know that when I was young and I would do training, it was very physical. As I got older, it became a lot more mental for me, the actual training part of it, the discovery of oneself. And I think back to my father's Red Philosophy book, on Amazon audiobook, by the way, with yours truly as the narrator. I think about that philosophy book, and the main goal, the main reason you study martial arts, it's to better yourself, and it's to, find who you are and be a better version. And I think something that Oscar and I try to remind ourselves is like every day, it's like 1% better every day. So if we're just trying to be at least 1% better every day, by the end of this very, very short time we have in this world, we will have been our best selves. And no external noise or no external opinion, it can really change that, right? Because I can only do what I can do. And but it doesn't mean that doesn't exist. It doesn't mean sexism isn't there, and that things are not fair, or there is inequality. And I think it is important to point out the inequality and to advocate for it, against it, and to advocate for oneself and for one another, which is why over the last few years I have become more active in social justice, because I feel like if there are any people that want to listen to anything I have to say, I might as well try to say things worth listening to, or maybe allow people to hear something in a different way they hadn't before. I will say we got, I don't want to say hate mail, but I got a lot of criticism for standing in solidarity with Black Lives Matter, or having transgender people on my show, and just some of the things that I've covered in these podcasts. And it's been interesting to hear how upset people get over something that I'm doing, right? I was like, well, if you don't like it, then don't listen or turn it off. But I feel like there's been a lot of conversations over the past few years that have helped me understand and learn and listen better. And I hope that some of these podcasts that I'm doing, whether it's lessons through martial arts, whether it's history of an ancient weapon, and how that relates to today and now, and the philosophy of that type of training, whether it's conversations I've had with people and storytellers, like I'm hoping that it allows my listeners to be able to hear something that will be of value, because I know that when I've been exposed to certain conversations, it has helped. And it's been very rewarding to be affiliated with a person that can be a role model, because I'm a strong, independent woman in a male-dominated field. And even saying that is hard for me sometimes, which is so weird, because I should totally embrace that. But the fact that I know that I have helped young girls look up and say, I could be a Kung Fu master. I've helped people, whether they're girls or boys, say, wow, okay, I can actually take things into my own power. I can advocate for something and make a difference, because these actions that I'm doing with the AAPI history, advocacy, and education, and just like going for it and actually doing things and putting it into action and trying to make laws, that it inspires younger people to say that they can do those things too, and that they have the power and that they have the ability to make change. Like, that has been really inspiring and uplifting for me. And hearing my Patreons, my patrons who support this podcast, just constantly encouraging me through donations and generosity, and just kind of showing that support in that way. And for me to learn to graciously accept that has not been easy. You all know who you are. It's been really empowering, and I always kind of come back around to gratitude and how much gratitude I have. And these are the things that help keep me going, whether I'm having a struggle, whether people are being cruel online, or whether there's a challenge at the temple, or there's a hurricane, or there is a really ridiculous person that's trying to block the work that I'm doing. Whatever the challenge is, whether I'm just depressed over hearing about the injustices in the world and I get a little wrapped up in world news, whatever it is, it's like, I'm so grateful for the people in my life that has always been uplifting. And obviously, number one is my husband, and then my family, my parents and my sister, like just that core unit of like being able to spend time with them and know that they support me, and all of the people that have been so encouraging. It's very humbling, and I'm really grateful that I have the experience that I've had through this podcast and through this media. And so those of you who don't like it, please just turn this off. And those of you who've been learning or feeling encouraged or been able to take action or have just been laughing at me for entertainment, that's fine too. I know that there's been value in it, and I am on over 300 episodes now. And just this year, I started to do a lot more of these solo episodes because people actually have told me that they like them. So I will continue to have conversations with the amazing humans that I have, but I will also continue to sprinkle these in. Mostly they will be about Kung Fu and martial arts and how all of that plays into everyday life. I know this one went a little bit left field all over the place, but I really think at the core of it, because I'm a martial artist and that's who I am, it has been still about martial arts, and it has kind of been that bringing it back to being who you are, feeling comfortable with that, and being able to like overcome all of these obstacles that get in your way. So I will stop rambling here, and hopefully this one wasn't too painful. And if you want to let me know what else you want to hear about, I do want to talk about my movie, Pui Chan Kung Fu Pioneer, next time, a little bit more about the immigrant's experience and being first generation American. And so I kind of have that in the queue because there's been a lot of questions. A lot of people have been rewatching the documentary. So hopefully I'll be talking about that next time, and how that kind of plays into a lot of the work I'm doing with the AAPI community, especially here in Florida. So I've been learning so much, and I'm excited to share, but I am by no means an expert on any of it. So thank you very much for listening. Shout out to all my patrons. You are the best. Thank you for supporting me. Those of you who just support me through kind words, I appreciate you as well. So please keep listening. If you want to be a patron, please join on patreon.com/Sifu Mimi Chan. Otherwise, everyone be kind out there, have empathy, and until next time, see you then. Bye.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to The Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/Sifu Mimi Chan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook.